After a slow start, Ohio State's defense locked in and shut down Northwestern.
You are Locked On Buckeyes, your daily podcast on the Ohio State Buckeyes. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, welcome into another Victory Monday around here at Locked On Buckeyes, which is your daily Ohio State podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host, Jay Stevens, also the host of the Jay Stevens Podcast, and today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. You can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet, and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets. If you win your first $5 bet, simply visit FanDuel.com to get started. During today's show, we'll discuss if the Buckeyes still have a shot to land Turbo Rogers, as well as a couple of players that are making the most of their playing time. But before we get to any of that, it's all about the Buckeyes defense, and over the weekend, get off to a little bit of a slow start. But once they locked in, it was night-night for the Wildcats. And that's exactly what we saw over the weekend. Northwestern had two drives that were productive. They were the first two drives of the game. After that, it was nothing. It was night-night. Northwestern couldn't do anything, and that's exactly what you want from the Buckeyes defense right now at this point in the season. This is the month for contenders. You're separating yourself from the rest of the other schools in the FBS. Ohio State's a contender. They were a contender, or they were believed to be a contender before the season. In September and October, they have proven they're still a contender. And in November, they're showing everybody we're still contenders right now. Now, at one point, it was because the Buckeyes offense was supposed to be really, really good, which it is, but also the defense is going to be really, really good too. Some people thought it was going to be the offense that was going to be better than the defense. But right now, it surely seems like the Buckeyes defense, while they re-engineered some stuff, is hitting on all cylinders. Almost all cylinders. We'll talk about some of that stuff later on in the week. But in this game specifically, Northwestern was driving on the first drive of the game. It's scripted offense for Northwestern and probably Ohio State too. Most teams script the first 12 to 15 plays. And as Northwestern is working their script, they're having some success. I mean, kudos to them for having these success. Jack Sawyer forces a fumble on the 18-yard line, or on Ohio State's 18-yard line. Recovered by Igvinosin. The very next time Northwestern's on the field, they score. And so they're having some success early. Some of the issues on Ohio State's defense are being exposed once again. But after that, it was night-night. Jack Sawyer was in the backfield a lot. Sonny Styles had a monster game. Cody Simon did his thing once again. Caleb Downs, what else can you say? I mean, being able to go from the safety depth to tackling a receiver behind the line of scrimmage for a 2-yard loss, and you hit him, and homie can't do nothing but fall backwards. And you all know that celebration knocked that bad boy out of the park right there in the friendly confines. I was here for that celebration, but I'm also here for what we're getting from the Buckeyes defense at this point of the season, not only on the road, not only in an abnormal environment, but also after facing some adversity, you overcome an obstacle. And that's exactly what you want to see from your defense right now. When you know you have a big game coming up the following week against Indiana, and then a bigger game the following week against Michigan, you want to make sure your defense is doing things right. You want to make sure your defense is picking up some of the nuances of the game and doing those things out there on the field. But you also want some of your stars to shine. Caleb Downs is shining, man. Sonny Styles is shining. Jack Sawyer, shining. You want your stars to shine. Lathan Ransom, Cody Simon, the stars are shining for Ohio State's defense. That's a big reason why over the weekend, even though Northwestern had some success, when Ohio State said night-night, it was over. Like, Ohio State just kind of had one of the punches that Northwestern could not come back from. And these are things that should help build confidence in Ohio State, in the team, for what they can do later on this year. Because once you realize that Ohio State's defense is kind of just suffocating the opposing offense, you want to have confidence that Ohio State defense can do that against Indiana, can definitely do that against Michigan, and then a potential rematch against Oregon in the Big Ten Championship. You have belief in the defense now, maybe more belief than you did earlier, that this version of the Buckeyes defense can do things to slow down Oregon's offense. If they suffocate them, that'll be one thing I would be an eye-opener, because I don't know if you can actually like suffocate that defense. It's that good, but you can slow it down to contain it. I think Ohio State's defense can do just that. But since that Oregon game, and it kind of showed up once again against Northwestern, Ohio State's defense has not only been really, really good with the re-engineered version of it, but also they're not allowing opponents to really score. Northwestern, the Oregon loss, Ohio State gave up 32 points. Since that point in time, the next 4 games, the Buckeyes have only given up 37 points. Gave up 17 points to Nebraska, gave up 13 points to Penn State, shut out Purdue, and only gave up 7 points to Northwestern. Now, the one thing I want to say is in this stretch, the Buckeyes defense has only given up 2 touchdowns. Dylan Raiola had one in the fourth quarter in the game, the homecoming game against Nebraska. The only touchdown Penn State scored was a pick 6 in the beginning of the first quarter. And then Northwestern scored early in the first quarter. So once again, you're seeing a defense that is not allowing a lot of teams to score. The most points anybody's given up in that stretch is 17. It's also the second most points anybody scored on Ohio State. The most is 32. The second most is 17. Outside of that, the Buckeyes have given up 14 or fewer points in every other game with 2 shutouts. So while Ohio State's re-engineering a defense, what are they also doing? Having success that they also had early in the year. So if you have 2 versions of Ohio State's defense, the first version early in the year and the version you have right now, I think most of us have picked the version right now, but both of them are having a similar amount of success. And I say this because early in the year, Ohio State's defense was doing some good things to shut out Western Michigan. Well, you shut out Purdue. That's a Big Ten opponent. That's even better. They only gave up 7 points on the road to Michigan State. Well, you only gave up 7 points on the road to Northwestern. That's kind of the same thing. Also, at Penn State, only giving up 13 points. That's way better than, Marshall scored 14, but one more point is one thing, but also only giving up 13 points on the road in Happy Valley in that environment, that is huge. So, yes, there's a beginning version, there's the current version, but what we're finding is no matter the version, most teams aren't scoring on Ohio State. Now, I think you need this version for a potential rematch against Oregon and whatever you face in the playoff. I do think you need this version now. You're getting more pressure on the quarterback. The linebackers are playing faster. They're more in tune with what's being asked of them. And the safeties are doing their thing. The only issue I see right now, it's the same issue you see because it's very apparent out there when we watch the games, that the corners at times are liabilities. Not all the time, but at times are liabilities. I said it over the weekend, and I'll say it again probably all week multiple times. Is this a week? Actually, last week may have been a time for them to experiment, since you're experimenting right now, putting Hancock out there at outside corner, bring in Lorenzo Styles. I don't think you want to move Sonny Styles from linebacker right now. Bring in his brother. Legitimately. If you want to put Jermaine Matthews Jr. in there at the nickel, cool. I think Lorenzo Styles is a better fit. But if you want to put somebody else out there that's kind of underrated, that just does everything he's asked at a high level, ask of him at a high level, put Hancock outside. Is this a week for them to potentially do that? If Burke has issues or if Igman has issues, maybe, but we haven't seen it yet, which makes me think that they're probably not going to do it. Just kind of preparing everybody for some potential hiccup. So we might see from the Buckeyes defense over the weekend against Indiana. But if we don't see them, it's because them boys is locked in. And when those boys lock in, it's night for the opposing offense. One thing opposing defenses don't want to deal with that may make them think their night is over is the Buckeyes' two-headed monster in the backfield. And both of those guys continue to make the most of their playing time. This episode is brought to you by 5 Hour Energy. Our friends over at 5 Hour Energy know that being a passionate football fan isn't just a hobby, it's a way of life. It takes a lot of energy to power through all-day tailgates, touchdown celebrations, or an agonizing second overtime, which is why they've created the Stand the Fan 5 Hour Energy Shot with a special flavor called Fan Fuel. The energy shot made just for super fans like us. The fans who are first in the parking lot and who are last to leave We see you. 5 Hour Energy knows that no matter what team you root for, being a fan requires heart, soul, and a whole lot of energy. Whether you're prepping for the big tailgate or ironing your jersey, your game day to-do list is always a mile long. That's why the limited edition Stan the Fan 5 Hour Energy Shot is here to keep you fueled throughout the season. What's your fan fuel this week? Whatever it is, do it with a 5 Hour Energy. Available on 5hourenergy.com, shipped nationwide. Thank you for making Locked On Buckeyes your first listen every day. Quinshon, Judkins, and TreVeyon Henderson are two of the guys on Ohio State's offense that consistently make the most of their playing time. TreVeyon Henderson is the first guy when it comes to the guy who is consistently getting the job done and making the most of his time on the field. But Quinshon Judkins does it too. And when you think about those two guys potentially playing on the field at the same time during some big games coming up, you have trust. You have faith in both of them. Maybe it's running a route. Noah Henderson is better at route running, but Judkins is getting the job done too. Maybe it is running between the tackles. That's more Judkins' bread and butter, but Henderson has drastically improved in that area too. Maybe it's running outside, maybe it's pass protection. Whatever it is, all of these guys, both of these guys, continue to make the most of their playing time. And when you look at just their yards per carry and the yards and the carries for the season, you're going to get a better picture of what they're doing and why I think over the next few weeks, Will Howard will lean on him a whole lot more than he has over the past couple of weeks. Because think about it. You have a top 5 game against Indiana this weekend. And in that game, one thing you're going to have to do is deal with a defensive front that is fundamentally sound. You deal with the linebacker group that's rangy and that is very, very solid. So what's one thing you can do to kind of set the tone early? Run the ball. Run the ball and run the ball. One thing that frustrates me, I haven't talked about frustrations recently because I wanted to kind of ride the high and just really be appreciative of the moment for how I like to play in the friendly confines at Wrigley Field and for another win. Like I wanted to really shine a light on that, but there are still things that frustrate me when it comes to Ohio State. It's sometimes, for some reason, Chip Kelly wants to throw the ball more than I think he should. Now, I'm not the play caller. I don't know the offensive game plan, but I do know football. When I know football, you can look out there and say, why are you throwing the ball here? You got number 1 and number 32 on your roster. 2 guys that are going to get drafted into the NFL that have been monsters for Ohio State this year. Let them boys tote the rock. Put it right there in their chest and let them go. Let them scoot. Like, just let them get that thing done. There were a couple times. I think it was a 4th and short. I think it may have been 4th and short 2 times. A 4th and 2 and a 4th and 3. Thinking, why are you throwing the ball deep? In the name of the game, to move the chains, get first downs. Why in the world are you going to throw that ball right there? Don't you realize that if you don't catch the ball, for it's a bad throw, it's turnover on downs, and Northwestern's offense is back on the field? Don't you realize that? I know that sometimes you try to test some things out just to see if it works. But also, you want to put points on the board. That could be your first down play after converting on that 4th down. That would make a whole lot more sense than throwing a deep ball 20-plus yards down the field on 4th or 3rd and short. So that's one thing that frustrates me, and I know that I've talked about it a few times. But when it came up against Northwestern, I don't care if it's 4th quarter or the 1st quarter. Buddy, just run the ball and get that first down, man. Make it so easy. Sometimes doing the easy call is the right call because it takes the stress out of what your job is asking you to do. But sometimes we don't get that consistently, and it makes your boy scratch his head. And sometimes I want to pull my hair out. But those of you watching right now on the YouTube, you see your boy ain't got that much hair. You got a fresh haircut. My boy Nino at Kokomo Blends gets me right every 2 weeks, and I'm very glad that I was able to get in this weekend before that game against Northwestern because I wanted to come on Saturday after that game and look fresh, man. Ain't nothing like a fresh cut. Hey, it ain't many. Well, some things like a fresh cut, some things that are better than a fresh cut, if you know what I mean. But honestly, there aren't many things better than a fresh cut. And with me going every 2 weeks, sometimes it's before a game. Like I literally be going back. I'll be getting a haircut in Michigan week, but not the day, not before the game, because it's Thanksgiving weekend. I want to look fresh when I go to my Uncle Jerry's house. I want to look fresh when I go to my father-in-law's house for Thanksgiving dinner. I want to look fresh on those moments because that's just what we like to do. And so when I get me a fresh cut, man, I feel good about it, man. I'm excited. I look at it. Honestly, I don't know if y'all do this or not. I look in two mirrors at my barber shop. My barber is on one wall, and then there's a barber really directly across from him. And I look at the other wall. So I look at that other barber's mirror. He's generally not there when I'm getting my hair cut. And then I'll turn around, look at my barber's mirror behind me. I want to get that cut from a distance and up close because my barber, man, sometimes his clippers are anointed. And when he puts them on my head, I'll walk out looking like a different person. He's even made comments about this. But this is just what actually happens because a fresh cut does something to you. And y'all know how you feel when you get a fresh cut. And sometimes when you hit with a play call, it just makes you feel different. It makes you feel like something is just hitting just right. Similar to a fresh cut hitting just right. Y'all know when Chip Kelly is calling the shots and doing things correctly. And so sometimes, you want to give Henderson a shot. Cool. He's getting the job done. Sometimes you want to give Q the shot. Cool. He's getting the job done. While neither one of these guys have had an overabundance of 100 yards games by an individual. Honestly, there's only been 2 games of a single rusher having over 100 yards. It was Quinshon Judkins, 108 against Western Michigan, then 173 against Marshall. Outside of that, you're getting 2 guys that are in most games are getting over 50 rushing yards apiece, 60, 70 rushing yards like a piece. So that's going to add up to the totals of Ohio State's rushing right now. Henderson in this conversation really speaks volumes to me, averaging 7.4 yards a pop, less than 100 carries, 662 rushing yards, and 5 touchdowns. Now for Quinshon Judkins, he has more carries. His yards are up too. He's also averaging 6 yards a pop. 121 total carries this year, 723 rushing yards, 6 yards a pop, and 8 rushing touchdowns. Now, while those are not career or eye-popping numbers for either one of those 2 guys, what we're seeing from them is a level of consistency. Henderson this past week, 6.7 yards a carry. Week before that, 14.2. Week before that, 5.4. For Quinshon Judkins, this past week, 5.1. Oh, he didn't really get it all done against Purdue with only 2.9. Week before that, 6.8. Against Nebraska, 2.9. Now remember, against Nebraska, he's coming off of an injury, had a hand injury, and so that did kind of cause him to not really be everything he wanted to be. I do think that kind of slowed him down a little bit. Also, Nebraska's rush defense is really, really good. But when Quinshon Judkins was struggling a little bit against Nebraska, TreVeyon Henderson, his struggles were kind of there too. But then what do you have? An offense that can do some things that aren't totally relying on those 2 guys to make the ball move down the field. So yes, they're both making the most of their playing time, but they're also not asked to do everything because Will Howard can move the ball with his legs. Didn't really do it that much against Northwestern. I think he'll do it more against Indiana. But also you got Jeremiah Smith and Emeka Buka and Cardinal Tate, 3 guys on the outside that make the offense flow. You got guys in the backfield making the most of their playing time. You got guys on the outside that are deadly weapons. You put that all together with number 18 calling the shots. It's some good guys in that tight end room. It's a really good unit. Also with the offensive line playing better ball right now, everybody in name mama should be excited about Ohio State's chances to not only beat Indiana, but to cover the spread as well. I already have my score prediction down in my head. I'm not going to say what it is yet, but currently the spread doesn't move. I got Ohio State covering the spread this weekend. We'll talk more about that later in the week. Later in this show, we're going to talk about Anthony Turbo Rogers. He is a guy that had Ohio State on his mind, and the Buckeyes might be closer to getting a commitment from this fast running back.